Thanks for joining us for another episode in the 2025 e-bike Lite Shootout. Today we're going to be talking about quite a machine, the Yeti MTe C2. Let's get into this thing. So this bike is part of our 13 bike lightweight e-bike Lite Shootout that we are doing here in Klamath Falls, Oregon. Before we get into this, we'd like to thank all the sponsors who have made this series possible. We have outfitted all of our test bikes with a set of Schwalbe radial tires. We have the Albert Gravity out back and the Magic Mary Gravity up front. Endura and Giro have hooked us up with clothing, shoes, and protection. Thank you guys very much for keeping us safe. And of course, Discover Klamath and the Running Y Resort here in Klamath Falls for being our host destination. An awesome place to come ride and experience some beautiful views and great trails. So let's get into the MTe.
All right, so the Yeti MTe is a 145 rear, 160 front TQ driven e-bike. It is quite the machine, and I think it hides a lot more behind that 145 mil of travel, but we will get into that here in a bit.
Absolutely. So one of the things that stands out to me about the TQ equipped bikes in our shootout is the massive 580 watt hour battery. You know, when we compare this SL or whatever e-bike Lite Shootout to our full power shootouts that we do in the spring, I have an entirely different mindset around how important the drive unit is and what drive unit is coming into a bike. You know, one, because so many of the bikes are so good and so capable that now we are actually getting to a spot where drive unit and battery size is more important than I would say like where, you know, I think 9 out of the 12 bikes we had at the full power shoot were all Bosch bikes, right? So there's less variation there, and I think TQ is, in our range test that we conducted at home, it was the most efficient for consuming battery, and the 580 is just bigger than anything else we've got, and it offers plenty enough power. So let's talk a little bit about that range test.
So on our 13 mile and 1,300 foot of ascent test loop, the Yeti MTe tied the Bosch pre-update when it comes to time. And as far as power consumption, it consumed 192 watt hours.
Yeah, and that was drastically less than the Bosch in terms of watt hours consumed. Yep. So this, again, is a very battery efficient system is what it seems like. Now again, our test rider was 195 pounds, not a super strenuous ride, and that was in the full boost or turbo mode. We have put over 6,000 foot days onto these 580 watt hour bikes. Granted, Sean's 160-ish pounds, but I mean, right now we're sitting at 56% after today's riding, and you're close to 3,000 feet in it right now. 2970, something like that. So, of course, you know, your power mode, your weight, your terrain can vary greatly, but we were just doing that short loop to get consumption and speed for reference. So let's move into, since we're talking about pedaling and climbing, how does this bike ride for you when you're in the saddle?
Yeah, so I mean, the seat tube angle is super comfortable. I really actually enjoyed a bit longer stem than we normally see. For me and my kind of longer reach, it fit me really well. On the negative side, I did find it was a little chattery on some of the more sequential, close, smaller hits on the climbs. I was getting a little bit more feedback into my feet and into my body from that chatter. But that did not translate to the descending performance, which we will get into later. The kind of power and feel you get from the Bosch is not present here, but it also doesn't overpower you a lot of the time, so you're able to really modulate your power up and over some of those, you know, steeper features.
That's not the gear. That was not the line I wanted, but that was the line I took. Made it. The TQ I like has some pretty good power at lower RPMs. It is lacking when compared to the Bosch and just flat out power, but I mean, that's a steep rocky shoot. And as long as you keep those cranks moving it delivers power even when it's low RPM and high torque needs. So, and the Yeti has some really good traction on the climbs. I'm a fan, I dig it. So as far as the climbing goes, in my opinion, I didn't quite feel it was maybe as noteworthy to criticize the in the saddle comfort. You know, I didn't think it was super rough or abusive, especially like, you know, I traditionally haven't been a huge fan of, you know, some of Yeti's stiffer suspension bikes. I think their Sixfinity and what they're doing every year in reducing, you know, any squat on the e-bike platforms is making me like the bikes more and more. Also worth noting that the bike has flip chip positions for leverage rates. We're running the bike in a less progressive leverage rate spot, which I'm very happy about. Yeah. I think that was great on the uphills, but especially really nice on the downhills. And it surprised me, but it also kind of makes sense again because it's a Yeti. I thought the Geo was really good. Our crew is all between like 5'11" to 6'2". We have some guest testers that are in the 5'8", 5'9" range. But we all liked this size large and felt like it was a pretty solid reach at that 480. It was a good, comfortable spot. The one, I guess, talking point when it does come to Geo is the low stack height. You'll notice we've got this thing pretty much maxed out. You know, we were just trying to get it higher and higher and higher, and it made a big difference. Granted, it's nice for the climbing, but on the descending, we did want for a little bit more, but ended up, I think we're in a pretty happy spot. Sure. With it at full height.
doing that change on trail did make a pretty notable difference on hand pressure. And you know, 5 millimeters doesn't sound like a lot, but it really can make a big difference. And when it comes to traction through a lot of these climbs, there's been no issue where I was like, oh man, I wish, you know, it hooked up a little bit more and things like that. So being able to keep your weight on the front while simultaneously centering yourself so the wheel's not lifting and you're not losing traction was no issue.
Absolutely. So moving into the more fun aspect of the ride, cornering, handling, jumping, descending, where does this bike sit for you?
Well, I think something I'd like to mention, and we always try and find something that really stands out with each bike.
Okay.
The thing that stands out most to me is how freaking quiet it is. It does not make a sound going down the trail, and all you can hear is these radial tires hooking up on this amazing dirt we have.
It's quiet. It's just dead quiet on the descents and on the climbs. It's pretty wild how for an e-bike and just for, you know, just a bigger bike, it's quiet. It's
That was like a huge note, something I really noticed every time I rode it, especially through the chunk. And as you got faster, it seemed to smooth out, and you definitely, I guess if you're riding the gnarliest of things, you want more travel. But as a mountain biker's mountain bike, bike first, ease second, it does a really good job at balancing all the aspects of the terrain that I really enjoy riding.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, we were filming some bikes and you were doing your hot lap, and so we kind of pulled to the side, and it's a pretty sharp, jagged, rocky section of trail, and like watching him come through there, it was like literally all you heard was the thud, which these radial tires, by the way, they make a very unique sound.
Which is so cool to hear when the bike is quiet.
Yeah, it's a different sound than normal tires, and like just hearing the sound of those tires hitting these just sharp rocks and nothing else was absolutely awesome. And whether you're on the bike or watching it go by, that is a standout feature. Yep. For sure. For me, another standout feature was, I would say, like the way the bike receives input and response, the way that you could just kind of like, I guess, manhandle it for lack of a better word. Like the bike really will change direction. It will lean if you want to push and pump it into a corner, if you want to like gap little stuff for, you know, picking up momentum. But like even more than that, I was blown away at how long the 145 millimeters of travel felt. Like I regularly was thinking this thing was a minimum 150 out back or more. So yeah, I think Yeti have done a really, really good job with the suspension package on this thing.
It's not the most playful. When it comes to, like, you know, if you take the Ari, for example, which we've always talked about, it's so fun and agile and skippy and poppy and playful. It kind of lives somewhere in between. It's not dead.
How about we bring in one more bike, the Pivot Shuttle Slam?
It is, I believe. I think the little bit longer chain stays and
On this. Yes.
just allows that slam to just edge out when it comes to kind of flickability.
Okay.
But like you said, there was one thing I did also notice, that when you really manhandled it and pushed it, it did what you wanted it to do, and it was really predictable. When that back tire started stepping out, I wasn't worried about it going too far, keeping that weight centered. And yeah, I think going up on the front end made a big difference for lifting the front and pumping and pulling for those gaps.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. And I also agree when it comes to like in the order of like our, I guess, trail to all mountain category bikes, right? We've got, again, 13 bikes, and you know, we're trying to break them up into categories to help the viewers decide which bike and category suits them. This thing is almost like a mid-travel enduro bike. Whereas like I would say the Aria is more of like the play flow trail like bike. Snapper. And I think the Pivot is like maybe a little bit, even though it's got a 5 mil more rear travel, I think this bike maybe edges out the Pivot when it comes to like just mashing these extended long rock gardens or hammering stuff at speed. And if I'm just really like wanting to put down a race run, like I think this, you know, combined with the TQ and the 580, like this is a really tough bike to beat for me. And again, I'm not, and have not been in the past, I should say, like a Yeti fanboy, right? Like I've never wanted to own a Yeti. Like it hasn't been like, I've always loved the brand and the image just from a history perspective, like growing up as a kid in the 90s and seeing those blue and yellow bikes, but like I've just never gotten along with them to where I would want to own one. That has changed this year with both the LTE and the MTE. Like they are both really sick bikes, and I'm stoked on the new Yetis.
I remember when we had the SB160E, that bike was like, man, this is the one that I want to race. And it was really sharp and could push through all the chunk, albeit more travel, right? This is in that same category of when I was pushing hard, it was really forgiving when I maybe pinged offline. I didn't tense up and, you know, get my weight upright. It was in those moments of like, oh no, this is going bad. It went bad softly and allowed me to correct and get that lean back over and keep pushing.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, unlike the 160E, you don't have to ride it hard to get everything out of it. If you want to just cruise and have a good time, the bike will still work really well for you. And to me, that is more important because I think it's a very small, you know, minority of people that are looking for the race bike and to be pushing hard all the time. So, okay, now let's get into the hard sale stuff. This bike is $9,850 at time of filming.
With a rhythm fork and mechanical derailleur.
Yes. And you know, we're not saying that mechanical derailleurs are like a deal breaker and we're too good for mechanical derailleurs.
It was amazing. It was great.
It worked great. We never had to charge the battery on it. And again, the bike was dead silent, right? Because those derailleurs just seem to be a little bit quieter. The shifter is a little bit clunkier after just like riding so many electronic shifters. Functionality, it works, right? But man, okay, let's talk about the price tag, the spec, and then the fit and finish of the bike. How do you feel about it?
It's a little painful.
Okay.
I think spec-wise, it hurts to see that number and get a shock and a fork that you can't adjust. Albeit when riding it wasn't on top of mind, but I think Sean said it well from a principle perspective of having that. And you can upgrade dampers, you can add a low speed knob to these, things like that. I really enjoyed having a wireless dropper. That was a big win for me. And then the other half of it, the clear coat on this bike just loves attracting knee scuffs and scratches, and it's definitely looking used after a few weeks.
Yes, I would agree. I mean, on the strong side, the bike is silent.
Yes.
Cable management ports are nice. The charge port's pretty solid. You know, all the hardware, all the bolts have stayed tight. So like, you know, I'm a sucker for a good head tube badge.
Yeah.
So like there are some nice features about the bike, right? Like their little, you know, kind of mud guard here at the back. Like, so there are some nice bits that are good at attention to detail.
Very thoughtful in what they were doing.
But nevertheless, yeah, the clear coat on the paint is a tough one, and I would absolutely say if you buy this bike, wrap it ASAP, because like it is definitely hazy. And then yeah, there's no denying, you know, spec, right? Like if you look at, if you're like an Excel spreadsheet shopper and you're just looking at parts to parts and price to price, and the ride part isn't dictating your shopping decision, like that's going to be something you're looking at. I would argue that there are $6,000 bikes that have XX axis and Fox factory suspension and whatever the best that brakes in the world are, and I would rather ride this spec on this bike. But that doesn't mean it would be easy to spend that kind of money on it either, right? But I don't know, on the flip side, maybe there's a premium that customers have to pay for a bike that rides this good.
Sure.
And that's, I guess, your call, not ours.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And riding down the trail, I wasn't like, oh man, I wish I could stop and, you know, add one click of low speed and change high speed to rebound. I was like, okay, that's where it is. Air pressure's set, put some tokens in it, and like you're good to go. And there is that aspect of it too, where it's kind of something you're not really thinking of, and it's not a big deal at the end of the day.
Performance-wise, like I said, I don't know that I would have ridden this bike any harder, any faster if it had different suspension on it, or if it had a wireless derailleur. Like the bike rips, and it did not slow me down one bit. I really, really like this bike, but yeah, there's no denying that is a conversation to be had with yourself and your wallet. All right, so I think we've pretty much talked about how much we like the bike, but let's keep it short and simple. Who's the bike for?
Someone that wants to push their limits, feel comfortable, have great suspension feel. I think this is someone that wants to dabble in a lot of the steeper stuff, a lot of the chunkier stuff. But if you live in a zone that doesn't have that, you're not going to be held back and have a bad time.
Okay. In my opinion, I really think this bike would excel for, and when I say excel, I mean riders who are a little bit on like the speedier end of the spectrum, or looking to push kind of hard and want to maybe have that little bit lower front end, go fast. On the flip side, I would say that riders who maybe want a kind of a smooth, dare I say, plush suspension feel without having 160 millimeters of travel, but they want something that's going to give like kind of a good stiff rear end feel to push into stuff, and just kind of like ride hard, but maybe not be like the overly jumpy guy, right? Like the bike absolutely can jump, but I would say like if you live for flow trails and tabletops and that manuals and all that kind of stuff, like this wouldn't be my pick for that. But I'd say everything else, if you're riding mountain bike trails and going mountain biking, this thing's sweet, and the TQ with the 580 kind of like really just add to that little bit of like, this is one worth checking out.
For sure.
So, well folks, there you have it. That is the Yeti MTe. If you have any questions or thoughts about this bike, leave them down below. We would like to once again thank our sponsors for making this series possible. Stay tuned as we work our way to the grand finale episode. Schwalbe Tires, Endura Clothing, and Giro were awesome partners. And of course, thanks to the Running Y Resort in Klamath Falls, Oregon for hosting us. Stay tuned. See you in the next video.